Don't you dare step in with your dirty feet. This is my son and my house. At the doorway, my mother-in-law, her face contorted like a demon's, grasped the walking stick that was leaning against the entryway. She swung it menacingly before thrusting it toward me. As soon as she opened her mouth to yell, I involuntarily shuddered with fear. This house was built with the intention that my mother-in-law, my husband, my son, and I would all live together. Having just finished, I was in the process of moving in our belongings when I was greeted by these harsh words from her. My husband had agreed to her request for a brand new wheelchair-accessible house because she didn't want to live alone at her old age, which had led to the decision of us living together. I was reluctant, but it was a done deal. Yet, here she was, spewing venom with a face so vile it seemed she might spit on me.
Listen, let me be clear, I've never once considered you a part of this family. A winner, unclean, stingy, poorly educated, you're such a stupid woman.
She yelled loudly enough to be heard by the neighbors, as she snatched the baggage from my hands. Throughout the years, she had been consistently malicious to me. She would come to our house unannounced when my husband was away, nitpicking my housekeeping or throwing away items just to spite me. This abuse had been ongoing since our marriage, causing me distress and making me dread the sound of the doorbell or a phone ring. At this moment, my husband was still in the car organizing stuff, leaving me to face her alone. She took full advantage of this, saying and doing as she pleased.
If you really want to live in this house, you must promise to obey me absolutely. If you do anything without my permission, I won't tolerate it. I'll kick you out immediately.
Her words were filled with such spite that they turned my grief into rising anger. There was no way I could live with such a person. Without a hint of a plea for cohabitation in my voice, I turned on my heel. Understood. I'm leaving. But just so you know, the husband and son you're so eager to live with won't be coming to this house either. My name is Catherine. I'm a 39-year-old who works as an office clerk while raising my elementary school son. I met my husband, Joseph, at the same company. Despite his busy role in sales, he has always been calm, and instead of using us office staff as an outlet for stress, he has always been considerate. His good nature is well known within the company, and it has led to him being trusted with even bigger responsibilities. Once, at a company drinking party, I drank too much as pushed by my boss, and I felt sick on the way home. Despite not being a young new employee, the embarrassment of not being able to drink properly compounded my shame, and I curled up alone, away from the group. That's when Joseph, concerned about me, came over to check on me.
Catherine, did you drink too much? Are you okay?
Trying not to be a burden, I desperately shook my throbbing head from side to side. I'm fine. Sorry for messing up at the company's party. While enduring a headache and nausea, I tried my best not to trouble him, but Joseph ended up taking care of me. He brought me a glass of water and a wet towel, and eventually, he drove me near my home. At that time, I already had feelings for Joseph, somewhat like a crush. That's why I felt even more embarrassed about making a fool of myself. However, this incident actually brought us closer together. From the next day, Joseph started talking to me more, and a few days later, he asked me out for a meal. After several dates, he confessed that he had been interested in me since before that drinking party. The thoughtful and well-respected Joseph is interested in me? I was surprised, my hands froze for a moment, and then I said, I'm happy. I've been interested in you too, Joseph. Tears of joy fell down my cheeks. That's how our relationship began, and after a few years of dating, we got engaged. It was the day we went to greet his parents at their home. When we visited the house, his mother opened the door for us. However, there was no smile on her face. She silently opened the door and only greeted Joseph. I might have a hard time getting along with this mother-in-law. The moment I first met her, I had that intuition. Even afterwards, the mother-in-law looked sullen as she walked down the hall with Joseph, glancing back at me or placing my teacup roughly when serving tea. When I tried to enter the kitchen to help, she snapped, I don't need your help. Please stay out. However, she didn't spoil the greeting atmosphere in front of everyone, and since the father-in-law was very kind, we were able to proceed with the marriage talks without any issues. Perhaps the mother-in-law didn't know how to behave towards the first woman her son was bringing home. I told myself that maybe that was the case. After we had submitted our marriage registration and moved into our new home, our new life began. That's when my mother-in-law started visiting our new home frequently. Moreover, she would always show up unannounced, suddenly pressing the doorbell. I work too, but I often come home earlier than my husband, who is in sales and frequently away on business trips. It seems like she knows this and deliberately chooses times when my husband isn't home to come over. Sorry, Joseph isn't home right now, I would say, thinking she probably just wanted to see her son, but my mother-in-law would respond, that's fine. I'm here to see if you're managing this house properly. Then she would go about checking everything from the front door to the dining table, and even opening the cupboards and bathroom doors. Sliding her finger along a shelf, she would remark, look at this dust. Don't you know how to clean? Flipping over the bath mat, she would criticize, where did you buy this? Don't use cheap stuff to dry my son's feet. She would nitpick in this manner, continuously. All I wanted was to relax from work when I was at home, but such behavior was deeply disheartening. At that moment, I would just respond, I'm sorry for my lack of knowledge. I will do better. But inevitably, a few days later, she would time her visits when my husband was not home and supervise me while I cooked, saying, your cooking is too sloppy. A wife should prepare a balanced meal every day. The beauty of modern times is being able to make delicious food easily during busy times. Seasonings that let you whip up tasty Chinese food just by stirring and frying, and various sauces that are easy to use depending on the dish, are all lined up in supermarkets. Of course, I was using these cleverly in my daily cooking.
What is this box? Are you using instant products? That's awful. When I raised my son, I made all the dishes myself. Don't feed him things with who knows what kind of poisons in them.
She yelled, pulling everything out of the cupboard and carelessly throwing them into the trash. And, unbelievably, she snatched the frying pan I was cooking with, dumped its contents into the sink. The shrimp in chili sauce, which was almost ready, was completely ruined. The plump shrimp, coated in red sauce, slid slimily into the drain net.
Hey, that was our dinner.
As I panicked, my mother-in-law retorted, I won't acknowledge a meal made with ready-made seasonings. Start over right now. The shock of having all the food I had prepared ruined left me dumbfounded and trembling. Nevertheless, I obeyed and started cooking again with trembling hands. When it was about time for my husband to return, she'd leave with a parting shot, don't feed my son strange stuff. There was nothing I could do about the discarded food, but I felt too sad to let go of the seasonings. I picked up what seemed usable. The items in boxes or unopened jars were fine, so I wiped them down and put them away neatly. My mother-in-law engages in such persistent bullying when her son's not around. There's guilt towards her son. But she just can't stand a young woman suddenly appearing in her life. Is that how it seems? After she left, I went to check the bathroom and discovered that the contents of a brand new shampoo bottle had been completely emptied. On another day when she visited, something else happened. I wonder when she rummaged through my vanity. The day after her visit, when I was getting ready to go shopping and started to do my makeup, I found my favorite palette completely messed up. It was a shock because it was from a brand I really liked. Moreover, there was a piece of paper meticulously inserted by her that read, "Don't waste makeup on an ugly face." Months passed, and I discovered I was pregnant. When we visited my in-laws' house to share the news, my mother-in-law ignored me when no one else was looking. It sure took a while for you to get pregnant. While my husband went ahead into the living room to talk with my father-in-law, I went into the kitchen to help out. That's when my mother-in-law made that snide remark to me. However, her demeanor changed completely when all four of us gathered. Congratulations on your pregnancy, Catherine. We're so happy to be blessed with a grandchild, aren't we, honey? I was left speechless by my mother-in-law, who put on her best act of being a nice person in a cajoling voice. At my house, she criticized my housekeeping, but here she showed a smiling face like a different person to my father-in-law and husband. It might be tough going forward, but it's great that we could share this news with Mom and Dad first. Unaware of his mother's devilish side, my husband spoke in a relaxed manner. You should continue to support the family properly. It seems that the father-in-law is also unaware of what the mother-in-law has been doing behind the scenes. He nodded happily to the two of them. Even as my pregnancy progressed and I went on maternity leave, her visits continued. She still frequently came to my house to criticize my housekeeping, and my spirit was already exhausted. One day, when my belly had grown quite large and my husband was at work during the day. As I was washing dishes, dragging my heavy body around, the doorbell rang. Just hearing this sound made my body twitch, and my nerves frayed. Without needing to check the camera, I knew it was my mother-in-law.
I know you're using your pregnancy as an excuse to slack on the housework,
she accused as soon as I opened the door, glaring at me while striding into the house.
There's quite a lot in the trash can. Have you finally become unable to even take out the trash?
She yelled upon opening the lid of the kitchen trash can. It was only because trash collection was the next day, and the can contained just 2 days' worth of trash. Moreover, I had cleaned out the refrigerator last night, which is why there was more trash than usual.
It's disgusting, unsanitary. What if bugs start to breed?
She fussed as she pulled the trash bag out of the bin, squeezed the air out of it, and sealed it. The smell of 2 days' worth of garbage spread through the room, creating a very unpleasant atmosphere. Yet, she seemed unfazed and left the trash bag right there in the middle of the kitchen, moving on to the living room.
Isn't it far more unsanitary to have a garbage bag filled with the smell of trash left in the middle of the kitchen? As I moved the trash bag to the side, I heard her shouting from the living room, "What is this dirty table? It's not a dump."
Going there, I found her freaking out over a table where several papers were laid out. Before childbirth, it's common to have lots of paper-based documents. Maternity booklets, documents received from the maternity clinic, and information about prenatal classes. There's quite a volume of these papers. These were left out intentionally for my husband and me to share and review together. You are hoarding trash. What if dust accumulates where we eat? She grabbed a nearby trash can, intending to throw away those important documents. I couldn't let that happen, so I grabbed her arm to stop her. Oh no. These are essential documents for childbirth and parenting. We can't afford to lose them.
Then you should have told me from the start.
Who was the one who barged in and started yelling without asking? After a brief struggle, she seemed to tire of the confrontation and threw the documents back onto the table with a fine. And then, our interaction ended. She clicked her tongue loudly and distorted her face in disgust. It's pitiful that a grandchild will be born into such a sloppy home. At this point, I couldn't hold back anymore. The home where my husband, our forthcoming child, and I were supposed to live happily was being continually criticized, and it was getting harder to imagine a happy life going forward. Why does she only bully me like this when my husband or father-in-law can't see? I decided to confront her with that question. Understood. I apologize. Moving forward, we'll be more mindful and strive to create a home suitable for raising a child. So, Mother, next time when Joseph is here, could you please guide us both again? When I posed the question, her face contorted even more and turned beet red as she ranted and raved, spitting as she yelled. Are you stupid or something? Housework is a woman's affair. Men shouldn't see such things. We're supposed to smile and make men feel relaxed when they're around. Behind the scenes, we need to be strict with ourselves. How were you even raised not to know that? Perhaps that was indeed how her generation thought. But at least I understood that she didn't want her son or her husband to see her nasty side. So that's how it is. I apologize for my ignorance, I said, gritting my teeth and forcing a smile. Her shrill voice was surely not good for the baby. I just wanted her to leave at any cost. If you understand, then good, she spat and finally left. Looking at the clock, it seemed almost time to coincide with the end of my husband's workday. That night. Did you take out the trash? My unsuspecting husband asked as he looked at the kitchen trash. Fortunately, I had ventilated well after the incident, so there was no lingering smell. Yeah. I did a clean out of the fridge yesterday, and it ended up being a lot of trash, so I thought I'd change the bag. I quickly made up an excuse. Standing before my husband, who knew nothing. Already exhausted from my mother-in-law's malice, I resolved that today would be the day I finally talked to him about it. I wasn't sure how he would react. But it was about his wife and his mother. Surely, he would at least listen. Hey, Joseph? Yeah? What's up? As I managed to utter his name, my husband, who had been reviewing documents for a parenting class at the dining table, turned towards me. His gentle smile momentarily wiped away my next words. Do you think my housekeeping is bad? What? Why? His confused look seemed to ask where this question had come from. It's just that, it's not just the two of us anymore, right? The baby will be here soon. I was thinking maybe I should be more careful about cleanliness and such. There's absolutely no issue. You always keep things clean, and there's no mold around the water areas. You've been working, and with the pregnancy and all the morning sickness and other difficulties, you're always doing your best. Thank you. His kind words nearly brought me to tears. Especially after enduring the bashing from my mother-in-law, his words resonated deeply. It felt like a rescue. And yet, I still couldn't bring myself to speak about his mother. She always played the kind person in front of him. What if he didn't believe me if I suddenly brought it up? What if not only my mother-in-law, but also my husband became adversarial? That would be far more painful than the current situation. If that's the case, I'd rather not stir up any unnecessary conflict. Moreover, his kindness and attentiveness hadn't changed, not at the company, not at home, and not since we got married. Even if I told him about his mother and he believed me, it would then deeply worry him. He might feel torn and distressed because it involves his own parent. He had been working harder than ever, especially since I started my maternity leave, to provide for our upcoming family. I didn't want to add to his stress. He was so important to me, and I didn't want to be a burden. However, my stress wouldn't just disappear, so I decided that, especially right before and after the birth, I would go back to my parents' house for a while to have the baby there, away from my mother-in-law. Many people opt for childbirth at their parents' home, and without needing to discuss her behavior in depth, my husband quickly agreed to it. It's only natural to want to be with your own parents during such a tough time. I'll take care of work and everything at home while you're away, so don't worry and just take it easy. Several weeks after being sent off with my husband's kind smile, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy at a hospital near my parents' home. We named him Joey. The postpartum life of caring for a newborn was harder than I had imagined, but thanks to my parents helping with everything around, I managed to get through it. If I had been at that house, enduring my mother-in-law's snide remarks, both my mental and physical health, as well as the baby's, might have been at risk. Then, just when I was starting to think about returning to our home, I received a call from my husband informing me that his father had passed away. Your father? Really? During our visits and even at our wedding, he had seemed healthy. There was no sign of illness, nor had my husband mentioned anything. He suddenly had a myocardial infarction. It's all chaos here, but you don't need to rush, Catherine. I just wanted to let you know. He said so hurriedly before hanging up. After sharing the news with my parents, I decided to leave my son Joey with them and attend the funeral. I quickly coordinated with my husband over minor details and prepared to go to the funeral home. Thanks for coming. Are you okay? You're not pushing yourself? My husband asked, always considerate even in such times. No, I'm fine. It must be hard on your side too. I'm sorry I can't be more of a help. My husband told me not to worry about it as I apologized. After offering our condolences, he said he had family matters to attend to and went to the back. That's when it happened. A sudden, strong impact hit my back. It was as if I had been punched, and I instinctively turned around to find my mother-in-law, dressed in mourning clothes. Ah, it seems the harassment is about to start again. Upon this encounter, I felt a dark fog descending over my heart. Oh, there's Catherine. I'm so sorry, dear. It seems I might be starting to get dementia. I mistook you for a utility pole. She said such a thing as she passed by me. Certainly, it wouldn't be unusual for her to begin showing signs of dementia at her age. And I've heard that it could be caused by a shock of losing a spouse. Even so, would someone suddenly mistake a person for a utility pole? Watching her back as she likely bumped into me on purpose, I couldn't help but fear what she might do next. It was terrifying. After the funeral, I went back to my parents' home, took my son, and eventually returned to our original house. It seemed my husband had managed to keep the house tidy amidst his busy schedule. Both the kitchen and living room were clean. Sorry for making you do so much, despite being busy with work. From now on, I'll take care of the house, so you can focus on your job. When I said so, he laughed brightly. Don't say that. Let's split the work, housework, parenting, and everything. We'll support each other together. Okay. I thought how wonderful my husband was. I truly felt fortunate to have married him. My kind husband and our son Joey. We were gonna build a lovely family together. However, even as we renewed our commitment to this ideal life, chaos soon ensued. My mother-in-law came to our house and began complaining loudly right next to me while I was busy taking care of Joey. Hey, how long are you gonna let the baby cry? As a mother, you should know what your child needs. I'm sorry. It seems he's not hungry, his diaper is clean, and he won't sleep. I'm trying everything I can. Suddenly, she reached out and grabbed my face roughly. You're a mother, aren't you? Ouch.
If you listen properly to the baby's cries, you should know what he wants. Don't give my grandson such inadequate care. You're failing as a mother.
The pain and humiliation of her grip, along with the escalating verbal abuse calling me a failed mother, brought tears to my eyes. Despite her harsh words, this was my first time raising a child. I'm not a mind reader, I can't possibly know exactly what the baby is thinking. I'm doing my best to navigate motherhood, but her criticisms were too much. See, you waste time like this and that's why you can't keep up with the housework. Look, there's even trash here. Oh, how pitiful my son and grandson are living in such conditions. She complained in a whiny, malicious tone as she began rummaging through the kitchen. Even when she finally left our house, the ordeal didn't end there. On the days she didn't come to our house, she started calling my smartphone instead. Recently, you know, my dementia has been getting worse, and walking is about the only joy I have. She would say nonchalantly on the phone. It seemed more like tormenting her daughter-in-law was her main source of entertainment. Just yesterday, Mrs. Smith next door went hiking. It's been years since I went hiking. I used to go to hot springs back then. Oh yes, and then Mr. Kane brought some persimmons to me, but I don't really like them. And what I heard were just rambling, inconsequential complaints that seemed to have no context. Listening to these aimless gripes while caring for a baby under 1-year-old was unbearable. It was unclear whether it was genuinely due to dementia or if she was intentionally irritating me, which made it all the more frustrating. So, reluctantly, I gave him some cookies in return. Hey, are you listening? She would snap if my responses seemed even slightly distracted. It wasn't because of dementia. This was definitely a new form of abuse. Amidst all this, our son was growing up quickly, and by the time he was 2, he started to pick up words little by little. The visiting mother-in-law doted on my son, generously giving him the sweets I usually limited due to nutritional concerns. My son happily exclaimed, "Delicious," while she looked on, pleased with herself. The snacks were exactly the type packed with sugars and additives, the kind I tried to avoid. At such moments, she'd pointedly ask my son in front of me, "Who do you like more, mommy or grandma?" It was clear she was using sweets as bait, aiming to make my son say he preferred her over me, which was quite distasteful. I quickly stepped in between my troubled-looking son and my mother-in-law, saying, "Please don't bother him too much. Also, we usually limit his sweets intake, so it's problematic if he eats too many." She snapped back, What's the harm in spoiling him once in a while? Don't you want your grandson to love you? Then, turning to my son, she said, Mommy is scary, isn't she? Don't worry, Grandma will be nice to you. This is the worst. I really wish she wouldn't say such inappropriate things to my son. But, when my husband entered the scene, she instantly switched back to playing the doting grandmother. Grandma is so happy to see healthy little Joey. With her around, I strived to ensure my son wasn't left alone with her, to avoid any further inappropriate feeding or indoctrination. Is there no way out of this? If this continues until she passes away. I find myself battling terrifying thoughts time and again, trying desperately to push them away. My heart has been worn down that much. I've reached my breaking point, yet I haven't been able to talk to my husband about it. How many more years must I endure this insidious bullying from her? Continuing this way, I fear I won't be able to maintain my sanity. The thought that this situation might prevent me from raising our son in a healthy environment is terrifying. Overwhelmed by anxiety and suffering, I've spent countless nights trying to figure out a way to escape this situation. One day, amidst this ongoing struggle, my husband came to me with a shocking proposal. So, I've been thinking about buying a new house and having Mom move in with us. The news hit me like a blow to the head, darkening my vision with shock. Here's the situation. Lately, my mother-in-law has been complaining of joint pain due to her age. And she seems to be visiting the doctor regularly. I've been all too familiar with her complaints, as she never misses an opportunity to grumble about her ailments over the phone. When my husband proposed buying a wheelchair-accessible house for her, she argued, but I don't want to live alone anymore. If you're building a new home, please make it so that I can live with your family. The thought of her frequently visiting our house to complain, and having to listen to her pointless chatter was already pushing my stress levels to the limit, and now she wanted to live with us 24/7. That would be unbearable.
Absolutely not.
Surely, since Dad passed away over 2 years ago, Mom has been alone. It seems like her dementia is progressing, and she can't go out as much since her health deteriorated. Staying home all the time must be depressing, so maybe it's a good time to move in together. What do you think, Catherine? He asked me this casually, as if it was a reasonable suggestion. This was my moment to reveal everything and refuse the arrangement. However, I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I responded like this. That sounds fine. We owe it to your mom, and I'm concerned about her health. Let's sit down together and discuss the details of the new house. My husband was thrilled with my agreement. As he took my hand and thanked me, I silently apologized in my heart. Because the life he envisioned with his mother and us under one roof was unlikely to become a reality. A few months later, the house my mother-in-law wanted was completed. It was an accessible, barrier-free home, with minimized steps and handrails installed at various points. We asked her to wait at the new house while my husband and I drove over to move in our belongings. At this time, I had already informed her over the phone that I would be coming over alone, ahead of everyone else. Probably, things would go smoothly. I couldn't help but smirk to myself at the thought. As I got out of the car and rang the doorbell, an irate mother-in-law greeted me with a fierce expression. Hello there. As I greeted her with a feigned innocent expression, she overlaid my voice by shouting in a low tone.
This is my son's house. Don't you dare step in with your filthy feet.
She gripped her walking stick at the doorway, brandishing it at me. The stick, meant for safe walking, was not intended as a weapon. Dangerous.
Listen, I've never once considered you a part of this family. A winner, unclean, stingy, poorly educated, you're such a stupid woman and I'll never accept you.
She shouted loud enough for the neighbors to hear, snatching the baggage from my hands.
I've been lonely since I lost my husband. I just want to live with my son and grandson. I don't want you to be here. Just seeing your face makes me sick.
That was fine by me. I feel the same way about not wanting to see your face.
If you insist on living in this house, then you must promise absolute obedience to me. You will follow my way of doing housework, parenting, everything. From where you place a bowl, to the pattern on a towel, to where you walk, if you do anything without my permission, I won't tolerate it. I'll throw you out immediately.
I see, that must be tough. It must be difficult to live like that. Just thinking about it was stomach-turning.
If you don't like it, then leave now. Go and wander the streets alone, away from my son Joseph.
I wonder if she has said everything she wanted to say. After a bout of ranting that seemed to satisfy her, my mother-in-law let out a sigh and relaxed her shoulders. At that moment, I stealthily manipulated my smartphone in my pocket. "What are you doing?" "Oh, just picking up some trash that was in my pocket." While I feigned ignorance, my husband, who had just gotten out of a nearby car, approached us. His expression was not the usual smile he showed to his mother or me. It was dark and tense.
"Mom, have you really been treating Catherine like this all the time?"
Joseph asked in a low voice. Seeing this, my mother-in-law gasped and staggered back, her eyes widening like a character in a comic book. She stumbled backwards as if she might collapse from the surprise. I had to suppress a laugh at her exaggerated dismay. "And to think I didn't know you were doing this behind my back. To find out that you've been this mean and cunning, it's shocking and disappointing. It's a misunderstanding. We were just greeting each other normally. Maybe you were hiding somewhere?" Maybe the distance made it sound strange. In front of my desperately scrambling mother-in-law, he and I simultaneously pulled out our smartphones to show her. That's right. From the moment I got out of the car, we had kept the call going. The smartphone was in my pocket. My husband heard every word shouted loudly by his mother. When Catherine said she wanted to keep the call open, I didn't understand why, but I'm glad I went along with it. Now I know how terribly she has been treated. It's not true. Please believe me. There was dirt there, see? Catherine's shoes got dirty because of it. She seemed so apologetic that I was just suggesting she fix it, that's all I was doing. With her face turning pale, she repeated her strained excuses, her eyes pleading in a sycophantic manner.
"No matter what you say now, it's useless. It's strange to mention useless, unclean in advice. And what do you mean by absolute obedience? You haven't been treating my family as humans."
I watched my husband angrily confront his mother for my sake. This plan was, in a sense, a gamble. I had asked him to listen in on my conversation with his mother via a call. It was uncertain whether my husband, upon hearing this, would become angry on my behalf or if he would interpret the situation as me being at fault and side with his mother. I wouldn't know until I tried. Naturally, I believed in my husband's sense of morality and trusted that he would support me once he knew the truth, but there was still a slight unease. That's why I felt genuinely relieved when he understood everything from our interactions and chose to stand by me. Marrying him had indeed been the right decision.
I can't let someone who disregards my family stay in our lives, even if she is my mother. And to think of the terrible things you've said to my wife, it's no joke. Wait, please. I just wanted to live with you, Joseph, and my grandson Joey. I'm in pain, and I have dementia. Please don't leave me alone,"
she cried, clinging to Joseph's arm. At that point, I spoke up. "Mother, your visits have truly troubled me. When Joseph wasn't around, you frequently came over to nitpick about the house, hurling insults at me. You've thrown away my food, ruined my makeup, asking strange questions to our son, fed him unhealthy food, and often disrupted my day with long phone calls during busy time with childcare." Hearing this, Joseph's expression hardened even more. "You did all that? How could you hurt my beloved wife so much and even negatively influence our son? I won't forgive this." He then decisively shook off his clinging mother.
"It's not you, me, and Joey. It's Catherine, me, and Joey. Don't say stupid things. From today onwards, we are cutting ties with you." "What? What are you saying? You prefer that stupid, ugly woman over me?"
In a panicked frenzy, she spat out words that no parent should ever say. "If Mom hadn't said those things, if you had been a decent person, I'm sure we would have truly cared for you. After saying those final words, we both nodded to each other, affirming our decision to leave. Let's go. Yeah. Ignoring crying and pleading mother-in-law, we got into the car. The car, now packed with our belongings, pulled away. We left her behind in the new, barrier-free single-family home. Our destination was my parents' home. The plan had been kept secret until its execution. Our previous apartment had already been vacated. We would be living at my parents' home for the foreseeable future. In the car, my husband sat in somber silence. I, entertaining our son in the back seat, watched him with a slight sense of guilt. I had sprung his mother's true nature on him so suddenly. Declaring estrangement was necessary, but no doubt shocking.
I'm sorry for surprising you. But thank you for believing in me.
I said so, reaching over the seat. He shook his head, gripping the steering wheel.
I should be the one apologizing. You suffered for years because of my mother, and I didn't notice. I blindly believed she was supportive of our family. I'm really sorry for not realizing sooner.
He spoke with a sorrowful expression and glanced back briefly, bowing his head. It was clear he truly cared about me.
It's okay. Maybe I should have consulted and discussed it with you sooner. I was just too scared. I'm sorry for causing such a fuss.
After apologizing to each other several times, the absurdity of the situation made us both chuckle. Thus began our new life at my parents' home. Initially, my husband was a bit nervous about living with my parents, who were the in-laws to him. However, my parents were straightforward and kind-hearted, which soon eased his discomfort. But, still, mindful of my own experience, I made it a point to check in with him every few days, asking, "Are you okay? Is there anything troubling you about living here?" He always reassured me that he was fine, and I made a concerted effort to ensure our home environment remained open and healthy. Our son grew up quickly, reaching the upper class in kindergarten. Whether he remembers the move or the issues with his grandmother is uncertain. He might have vague memories, or he might not remember at all. Either way, it doesn't matter. As long as he grows up healthy and happy, that's all that really counts. The new house we left her behind was originally purchased in my husband's name, but we sold it as soon as we moved out. Officially, the house, built for the reason of housing my mother-in-law, was listed as sold to her. However, given her advanced age and declining health, there was no way she could manage the mortgage payments on a single-family home. She was forced to move again, as living in that house did not materialize. She reluctantly tried to rent an apartment on her own, but it seems she struggled to find a place as her applications were repeatedly denied due to her age. When my father-in-law passed away, it appears he left some inheritance, but she, being a big spender, had squandered it on luxurious inns and high-end restaurants, leaving her with hardly any savings. She had no choice but to move into a low-rated, affordable nursing home due to her financial situation. My ex-mother-in-law told her son, Joseph, and I heard it from him. Each time she contacted him, she would say things like, "I was out of options back then. I'm reflecting on it. I'm struggling without a place to live or money. I apologize for back then, so can we live together in that house now?" However, each time Joseph firmly responded, "Don't tell me, apologize properly to my wife Catherine, and promise never to harass her again." My husband kept me informed about these developments, but ultimately, my phone never rang, and I never had to take over any calls between them. It seems no apology to me was forthcoming. An old woman who only says what's convenient to whoever it suits, and never makes an effort to address truly necessary issues despite being told repeatedly, is truly beyond help. We were so appalled that we blocked her number and all her messages. It seems that even after all that, she did not change her ways. Afterward, I heard through the grapevine that this happened. She's been causing trouble in the nursing home, picking fights with staff and other residents, hiding their belongings, and bad-mouthing them secretly. Naturally, such a person should be avoided by both the staff and other residents. She became known among those around her as someone troublesome to avoid, and despite being in a facility, she hardly had anyone to talk to. The very woman who once cried out in loneliness to keep my husband by her side now seems to be living through lonely days herself. Meanwhile, We used the money from the house sale to buy a new home. We didn't want to live indefinitely at my parents' house and determined to create our own family space. But the location is near my parents' house. There was a famous soccer team at a nearby elementary school, and that was why we wanted to enroll our son there. While attending kindergarten, our son Joey also started playing kids soccer. His interest and talent combined, allowing him to rapidly improve his skills even at a young age. Watching my son joyfully chasing after the ball and running around, it was clear he was having a great time. As parents, we had many responsibilities, including drop-offs, pickups, and attending his events on weekends, but seeing him try so hard made any fatigue quickly disappear. My parents, who lived with us briefly, treated both Joseph and Joey well, and now Joey loves his grandparents deeply. "Grandpa, Grandma, come see me play soccer," he'd say innocently, melting their hearts. Once he started elementary school, our son also joined a soccer team, where he continued to develop his skills. A few years later, he was selected as a starting member for the local matches, and by then, it had become a tradition for me, my husband, and our parents to attend every soccer event he participated in, cheering him on together. We can all watch over our son's growth and achievements as a family, filled with smiles and free from any malice or harassment. Looking back, we've been through a lot. But we never gave up, thought critically to find solutions, and most importantly, we're blessed with a kind-hearted partner to overcome tough situations. Thanks to this, we were able to repay my parents by showing them their grandson's growth in our new, loving home. We will continue to live our days brightly, calmly, and filled with smiles.